Everyone, Aaron here with AP Studios and apstudiosroc.com, and tonight we are going to do a live edit of a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights Otis Gyrie Scary Stories Told in the Dark episode featuring Malcolm Blackwood. So this is going to be the episode that will be premiering tonight or possibly tomorrow, depending on when it's uploaded, but I wanted to get on here and just do a live editing session of what you'll hear on the YouTube version. This is different than the extended version, which is going to be available on their Patreon. And I'll put links of all of that stuff down below, but let's just get going with the edit. And to speed things up, I've already done the post-production for the actual stories and the host segments. So all we're going to do today is just go line by line from the host segments. I'm going to cut up that audio and put in between the stories, and we're just going to get a big, epic, long, this is probably going to be a 2.5 or so hour, just scary stories episode. So let's get going. And if you have any questions below, leave them, say what's up, anything like that, just let me know, and I'll interrupt every now and again just to put some input and insight on what goes on with these edits. And yeah, I hope you're having a great Sunday night, and let's get going.
You're in the wrong place.
And this is just the intro.
Terrifying tales you're after? Well then, I've got just the thing. Get comfortable, settle in, turn off the lights, if you dare. Your
I'm just
night
gonna skip forward on this.
Good evening, friends. It's Sunday night, and that means it's time to dim the lights, get comfortable, and prepare for another evening of eerie encounters, unsettling mysteries, and stories designed to make you question what's working just beyond the veil of memory. I'm your host, Otis Gyrie, and tonight's tales takes us into the realm of things left behind, things erased, things buried, and things that refuse to stay forgotten. Some disappear without a trace, others come back when no one is looking, and some were never truly gone to begin with.
All right, cool. That's the first little segment of that, and this is where the second host, Malcolm Blackwood, comes in, so I'm just going to cut up some of those lines.
And some were never truly gone to begin with.
There's something about being forgotten that unsettles me, Otis. Maybe it's the idea that you could just slip through the cracks. One day you're here, and the next, it's like you never were.
Cool. Just rolling right along.
That's the terrifying part, isn't it?
One day you're here, and the next, it's like you never were.
That's the terrifying part, isn't it? The thought that...
And sometimes you'll notice with that, there's a little bit of a pause between Malcolm Blackwood and Otis Gyrie. I like to leave some little nuances here and there just because even though I'm post-producing this after the fact and they're not technically live, I still like to add in that element that they could possibly be live, and this is a radio broadcast audio drama, so I like to make this as authentic as I can, just like they're really just doing this live right in front of you, or in front of you, quote unquote, listening through your headphones. So that's just a little quick thing with that.
Reality isn't solid as we think. But if tonight's stories prove anything, Malcolm, it's that even when the world forgets something, something always remembers.
And when it comes back, it's usually not empty-handed.
That's the truth. Our first tale tonight takes us into the depths of a secret project that should have stayed buried. An experiment lost time until it wasn't. and what it uncovered. Well, it was never meant to be found again, so sit back, my friends, and keep an eye on the things you thought were lost.
Cool. So that's going to be the end of the premium version, but if you're listening to YouTube, you're going to hear this little promo, which is just going through what it, entails to become a Patreon member, what some of the things are that you would actually get if you were to subscribe for their Patreon. So let's edit that.
Before we begin, I'd like you to know that if you enjoyed tonight's tales but want even more, we've got just the thing for you.
We'll go back to Blackwood.
By joining our patrons area, you'll unlock the full extended episode, featuring all stories without interruptions, plus access to our entire Simply Scary Podcast Network archive. All this for just $7.99 a month, or save even more with an annual plan.
Head over to simplyscarypodcast.com and select patrons in the top menu. You'll be directed to chillingtalesfordarknights.com, where you can start your membership and step deeper into the darkness.
Support indie creators, enjoy ad-free episodes, and double the horror. What could be better? Join us today. Thanks so much for your support. Now, back to the show.
Like I was just saying, that is their membership area. If you do want to join that, I'll have information down below for you to join that. And we're going to get right into the first story, which is called Project Starlight. And these are just straightforward narrations, either by Malcolm Blackwood or Otis Gyrie. So I don't have to actually do any editing because they already did that already. I'm not adding sound effects. I'm mainly just making sure the levels are matched and just put it in order of the episode. We've got the intro, the host segments, story, host segments, story, host segments, story, host segments. That's sort of just the general rundown of the show. So let's get into the intro for the first narration, which is once again called Project Starlight.
Our first story takes us deep into the shadows of history, where a long-buried experiment resurfaces with chilling consequences. Some things were meant to be forgotten, locked away where no one can find them. But what happens?
And once again, this is going to be available for YouTube, most likely either later tonight, 9 p.m. EST. And if it is running a little bit late, that's just something that happens sometimes. So be sure to subscribe to their YouTube channel and just get ready for that when it comes available.
Yours truly, Otis Gyrie. This is Project Starlight by Charlotte Morrow, performed by yours truly, Otis Gyrie.
Cool. So here I add a little stinger, and we're going to get right into the story. Just got to move some files over.
Performed by yours truly, Otis Gyrie.
You can hear that little stinger, but I'm actually going to tighten that up a little bit.
Performed by yours truly, Otis Gyrie.
And I do like to add a little bit of a fade out in between the stinger and the music beds, so it kind of just fades out on its own, as you can hear right here.
Truly, Otis Gyrie.
Right there, and then this is where I'm going to add in the music bed for the actual story production. And then we've got the story itself.
Part 1.
And I usually like to start at about 5 seconds after the last host segment, as you can see.
Yours truly, Otis Gyrie.
right about there is where you're going to hear the first vocals.
Part 1.
Right there.
There in Nathaniel Ross's basement,
and since we do sometimes have promo segments, sometimes we have sponsors, we like to add in breaks that are about 2 seconds long or so every 15 minutes in a story. So I'm just going to skip ahead and add in a 15-minute mark.
Nowhere, its existence erased from modern maps. The road leading to it had been over. No movement beyond the wind stirring in the dust.
And actually, I don't need to extend that too much because there's already a decent gap between set sentences.
There's no movement beyond the wind stirring in the dust. Rebecca's.
Perfect. All right, let's go to 30 minutes. And there's actually going to be...
Outer, the whispering rose, and the children opened their eyes. Part 4.
Cool. It's right between a part, so that actually gives me a perfect time to cut in between them.
Children opened their eyes.
Perfect. Cool. And this story is not much longer than that. I don't think we're going to have to add in another one. Nope. Cool. So I'm just going to extend the music bed out to the end of this narration.
Never existed at all.
Cool. And so at this point, we're going to add in another stinger, and this is going to be a different stinger that concludes the story before we get back into the host segments.
The photo was gone. The entire thread was gone, as though it had never existed at all.
And once again, you can hear the music fades out right where the stinger is at its loudest point. So it doesn't come off jarring or anything like that. It just kind of fades into the background right before the host segment music starts up again. It's actually a little late, so I'm going to move that up. And that's actually just muscle memory right around where I like to have it. And we're going to do the recap of the story that just was on.
At all. And that was Project Starlight by Charlotte Morrow, performed by yours truly.
Get some more Malcolm Blackwood host lines.
Morrow, performed by yours truly.
I'll tell you what, Otis, if an experiment was shut down, classified, and erased from history, there's usually a damn good reason why.
Cool. Moving right along.
That's right. And digging it up again? That's just asking for trouble.
And yet some people just can't help themselves.
No, they can't. But I've got a feeling this next story proves that curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially when the wrong eyes are watching.
This next one, it's not about something buried in the past. It's about something right in front of us. Something that looks innocent, harmless. But when you look too long, well, you might not like what you see staring back. This is the 15-Second Soul Sucker by Craig Groshek, performed by yours truly, Malcolm Blackwood.
Cool. So this is where they switch it up a little bit, and they're doing the second story with Malcolm Blackwood. They like to interchange one after another with the YouTube version and also the premium extended version as well. And also, if you're joining this at any point during the stream, feel free to ask any questions pertaining to either the audio that I'm working on or just questions in general when it comes to audio production. I'd love to help out as much as I can. And this is where we add the intro stinger to the story.
Malcolm Blackwood.
And get the music bed in there. Cool. Just moving parts.
Blackwood. Part 1.
6. Again, I'm just lining up times. I like to have about 5 seconds of dead air between the host segment and the start of another story. Just trying to move it right along. Bring it on the scares.
Part 1. Returning to...
Cool. And like I said, these stories are already edited by the people that were narrating them. So all I gotta do is just add in the breaks. So right at an hour, we're gonna add in another 2-second pause just in case there is a sponsor or anything like that.
Locker room echoed in my head. You can't stop me, Arvin. You're just like the rest of them.
Cool. That's a good spot for a break.
Just like the rest of them. I didn't know.
Perfect. Go to add in another one right around 75 minutes.
I could feel something fundamental.
And this is actually working out in my favor so far. Right where I'm thinking about actually putting in a pause, it looks like the narrator has already unknowingly put a pause in there where I would have anyway. So it's actually making this a lot easier.
But real. And neither have I.
Cool. That's the end of that story. So once again, I'm going to bring in the transition stinger to conclude this story. And we're just moving right along. Like I said, a lot of the post-production was already done previous, just so I can actually get going with the production side of putting the script together and the stories together, so you don't have to just watch me while I'm EQing and compressing and noise reduction and all that stuff, which I already did previous, so you can just skip all that stuff. If you do have any questions about what I do for each person individually, I'd be more than happy to go over that as well, but let's get rolling.
And neither have I.
Malcolm,
All right. Just moving audio clips.
And neither have I.
All right. Bear with me. A couple of them got out of order.
It's what you all. I never will. All I know is that ever since that day in the gym, the world hasn't felt real. And neither have I. And that was the 15-second Soul Sucker by Craig Groshek, performed by yours truly.
Malcolm,
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever been so glad that I don't spend much time around children.
Yeah, something tells me that's for the best. Gregory, he's the kind of nightmare that just keeps getting worse the more you think about him.
Oh, Gregory.
And the worst part? No one sees it coming.
This is why I do everything I can to make sure I'm the one doing the sneaking, Otis.
Charming, Malcolm. But not everything's that scary as hell and operates in the shadows, as we'll soon find out.
All right, going into the third story's intro.
Our next tale takes us to a small town where something impossible happens. Something that shouldn't be
And
able
like
to...
I was saying earlier, the extended version has all 5 of tonight's stories, and this one is just going to have the first 3. So if you are interested in all 5 of the stories, make sure you go on into their Patreon area and subscribe, because the last couple tend to be just equally as intense as the other 3 previous. There's some really great, talented authors that have some of their stories that go into the extended versions.
When the sun betrays you, how can you trust anything else? This is The Sun Blinked by Craig Groshek, performed by yours truly, Otis Jiry.
All right, and you know what's going to happen next. We're going to add in a stinger and get right into this next narration. Just moving audio clips.
Yours truly, Otis Jiry. Performed by yours truly, Otis Jiry.
And that's a little long. I'm just going to take a couple seconds to tighten this up. Cool.
The Sun Blinked by Craig Groshek, performed by Otis Jiry.
And I usually like to get rid of the intro notes, so I can just get right into the actual story itself. So I do remove that.
Yours truly, Otis Jiry. Performed by yours truly, Otis Jiry. Part 1.
All right, cool. It's moving right along. Let's add some ad breaks in. We're at 90 minutes. And it looks like there's one right here,
Have to be.
right in between a part.
Part 3.
Yep, perfect. So that worked out great. And it looks like the story is longer than the music bed, so I'm just copying and pasting another one, so we have a bit more to work with. Add in another break right around 1 hour 45. Looks like there's actually, it's going to work out once again where it's going to be in between a part.
Eyes betrayed their attempts at bravery.
And that's more than enough time, so we're just going to keep going. And we're right around 2 hours. Oh, actually, it's around an hour 58, so we don't need to add in another break. We can just get right into the host segments.
More powerful than fear. Hope.
Perfect. And if we're at the end of the story, that means we're going to add in a stinger and go right back into the host segments. And then there's a little something different I do after this spot, just because this is going to be the YouTube version and not the extended version. So all I really do after this part is I skip down into the script and see where the ending remarks are and, anything like that, if there's any announcements, anything like that. So I just skip through the lines. There is another promo segment, so we're going to add that in, a little bit of banter, and then we're going to wrap the episode up. And since I don't have all of the stories for the extended version, this live stream is just going to cover the YouTube version, which makes sense since we're on YouTube right now. I'm just going to show you what goes into the YouTube version, so that actually works out nice. And I should probably have the extended files probably by the time I wrap this up.
And that was The Sunblink by Craig Groshek, performed by yours truly.
You ever just feel like the universe is messing with us, Otis?
Oh, all the time, Malcolm. And after that one, I don't think I'll ever look at the sky the same way again.
Yeah, sometimes it's not what you see, it's what you almost see that sticks with you.
Our next...
All right, so this is where we're at with the extended version, where they're going to introduce the fourth, then the fifth story, but since we're not doing that with the YouTube version, I'm just going to solo each of the audio tracks and skip forward down to the Patreon area promo, which is not going to be obviously in the Patreon extended edition. So the audio does change depending on which version that you're listening to. So we're just going to skip forward and remove the remaining lines. Then we're going to re-add them in when I get those files. But for now,
pay the price for knowing it. Our final tale tonight, Waiting, and that was The Widowmaker's Curse by Rhett Monroe, as performed by yours truly. And once you're marked, well, there's no telling when the ground will finally give way beneath you. A wise decision, Malcolm. But there's one last thing left to do. Thank those who help bring these nightmares to life, and remind our listeners that the darkness is always just one story away.
cool.
Just head over.
So that one's all set. Now we're going to do Blackwoods.
Anytime soon. Thank you, my friends, for joining us tonight.
Cool. Now we're just going to extend the music and cut this up.
It's what you almost see that sticks with you. that sticks with you. Thank you, my friends, for joining us tonight. And if tonight's stories left you craving more, we've got plenty where those came from. For just $7.99 a month, you can unlock extended episodes, exclusive content, and ad-free horror that keeps the nightmares coming.
Just head over to simplyscarypodcast.com, click Patrons, you'll be taken to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, where a whole world of horror awaits.
Support indie horror, skip the ads, and keep the stories coming. What else could be better? Join us today, and as always, we appreciate your support.
And if you're still hungry for more, check out my other podcast, Otis Gyre's Tales from Duskwood, where I bring you even more chilling stories every Wednesday night. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to our parent channel, Chilling Tales for Dark Nights on YouTube, and tap that bell icon so you never miss an episode. Once you're there, you'll have access to a vast library of terrifying tales. Parent channel, Chilling Tales for Dark Nights on YouTube, and tap that bell icon so you never miss an episode. Once you're there, you'll have access to a vast library of terrifying tales.
It on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to our parent channel, Chilling Tales for Dark Nights on YouTube. And as always, we appreciate your support.
And if you're still
appreciate your support. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to our parent channel, Chilling Tales for Dark Nights on YouTube, and tap that bell icon so you never miss an episode. Once you're there, you'll have access to a vast library of terrifying tales.
And if you're still hungry for more, check out my other podcast, Otis Gyre's Tales from Duskwood, where I bring you even more chilling stories every Wednesday night. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Also, don't forget to follow Chilling Tales for Dark Nights on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
And if you want to chat with me directly, I'd love to hear from you. Look me up on social media and let me know what you thought of tonight's episode.
And last but not least, don't forget the incredible authors behind tonight's stories. Visit their websites, support their work, and help keep independent horror alive. Keep independent horror alive. Independent horror alive.
Well, my friends, that's it for tonight. If you've learned anything, it's that some things refuse to stay buried. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and most importantly, stay scared.
Sweet dreams, listeners. Sweet dreams.
All right, so at this point, there is an outro that plays, so I'm just moving that in and crossfading the music bed with that outro. Cool, and that sounds like this.
Sweet dreams.
Thanks for listening.
Cool. And that's pretty much the gist and the basic rundown of how I normally edit a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights narration for the Otis Gyre Scary Stories Told in the Dark episode. This is not so much sound design as it is just editing the package together and putting it together for the actual YouTube and Patreon release. So from this point, all I do is I'm just highlighting all the audio files. I'm mixing everything down to a single track. From that point, I use a loudness meter. I set it to -16 LUFS, which is going to be great for Spotify and anywhere that someone is going to be listening to these episodes. Then I add a limiter after that and actually raise up the overall volume to -3 dB, then save it to a WAV file at 48,000 bits and a mono track, of course. And that's going to be pretty much it for this editing for this podcast episode. So thank you so much for checking out this episode. And if you are interested in any audio production techniques, tips, tricks, anything like that, feel free to subscribe and ask me any kind of questions down below, and we'll work together and make sure your audio or any of your other questions are answered. And if you want to work together, shoot me an email at aaronsawicki@apstudiosroc.com and let's work together. I'll talk to you later.